The title of this year's report really captures or says it all. Energy is everything. Energy is fundamental to our society. From the electricity that lights our homes and powers our appliances, to the fuel that keeps our vehicles running, to the chemicals that make modern medicine possible, the report demonstrates the countless ways that energy is essential to modern society, with oil and natural gas serving as that foundation. Energy is so thoroughly woven into our daily lives that few will ever question whether it will be there or, in fact, where it comes from. By detailing energy's integral contribution to almost every moment of every day, the report gets back to the basics and keeps the focus where it should be, on the American energy consumer. Pundits are still analyzing the 2016 election, but one thing is certain. Voters want and expect change. And above all, they want results and a renewed focus on finding positive solutions that improve their daily lives. Exit polls found that almost 70% of voters are dissatisfied with the way the government is working, and revealed an electorate that feels policymakers are out of touch with their daily problems and priorities, with the exception of those distinguished policymakers we have in attendance today. And I want to personally thank them for being with us today. Voters' clear expectation is that their elected leaders will work together to advance common sense policy that is focused on their needs and their daily realities, rather than to continue partisanship and government gridlock that has marked recent years. In this new year and at the start of this new Congress, we have an opportunity to change the national conversation when it comes to energy policy. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to find solution for most of today's most pressing issues, including creating middle-class jobs, tackling income inequality, ensuring sustained affordable energy for consumers, and enhancing our national security. And for all of these goals and others, the 21st century American energy renaissance offers solutions. Many of you have probably heard me or others say many times, but it bears repeating. The United States is the leading producer of oil, natural gas, and refined product in the world. Our nation's rise to global energy leadership is a result of a 21st century energy revolution in production and refining, which has directly benefited America's families through lower energy costs. The average American household today has saved as much as $1,337 just due to lower utility costs and other related energy savings just in the year 2015. In addition, AAA reports that American drivers have saved as much as $550 just in their transportation costs a year. America's energy abundance is also helping to cut materials and energy costs for our American manufacturers, many of whom are represented here today, including producers of steel, chemicals, refined fuels, plastics, fertilizers, and numerous consumer products. U.S. industrial electricity costs are 30 to 50% lower than those of our foreign competitors. And American manufacturing costs are now 10 to 20% lower than those in Europe, and could be 2 to 3% lower than China by 2018, an important competitive American advantage. These lower energy costs are helping to attract a return of manufacturing here to the United States. For example, according to an analysis done by the American Chemistry Council, chemical production grew 3.6% in 2015 and is projected to continue to increase through 2020 as new capacity from 266 new announced projects come online. And as the planet's population continues to grow, demand for affordable and abundant energy will also grow, which will not only improve the standard of living of millions, but will also lift many more out of poverty. Today, many of the planet's most vulnerable people lack access to clean, affordable, and reliable energy. The International Energy Agency estimates that more than 1.2 billion people around the world currently lack access to electricity. Further, 2.6 billion live with inadequate cooking facilities, which lead to, among other things, chronic health issues. Abundant and affordable American natural gas will be key to providing access to reliable and cleaner burning fuel to help them cook their meals and heat their homes. A growing world population with a growing demand for energy is why the overwhelming, consistent view of energy experts, economists, and government agencies, including our own U.S. government's Energy Information Administration, estimates that fossil fuels will continue to form the foundation of the United States and the world's energy needs far into the future. According to EIA projections, oil and natural gas will supply more than 60% of U.S. energy needs by 2040, even under optimistic scenarios for renewable energy growth, all of which we support. Worldwide energy consumption will increase 48% by 2040. Largely due to expanding economic opportunities in developing nations. And more than 3/4, or roughly 78%, will be met by fossil fuels. Beyond consumption, we continue to make and pursue advancements in energy efficiency, also part of a true all-of-the-above energy strategy. An EIA study noted that in 2015, the U.S. used 15% less energy and emitted 23% fewer energy-related CO2 emissions than the same economic activity just 10 years earlier in 2005. Our global community will need more energy, and oil and natural gas will continue to be the dominant source for decades to come. The only question up for debate is which nations will help meet our future energy demands, our global energy needs. The ongoing American oil and natural gas development and refining renaissance has made it clear that the United States is and can be a leader in meeting those needs. But to achieve that goal, we need smart, pro-growth energy policies that promote safe and responsible development, energy development, and recognize the central role that fossil fuels will play in meeting energy demand. Throughout our history, the oil and gas industry has shown the world how the entrepreneurial spirit, innovations in energy production techniques, a core commitment to safety, pioneered and reaffirmed every day by the millions of men and women who work in the oil and gas industry, and smart, effective regulations have transformed the United States from a passive consumer on the world energy stage to a leader in only a decade's time. And we have helped to disprove, and I believe conclusively, the long-held assumption that increased energy production, refining, and consumption must necessarily lead to a dirtier environment. They don't. In fact, what we know from recent performance is we no longer have to choose between energy and a cleaner environment. Our nation has dramatically increased energy production and use, even as emissions continue to decline. According to the EIA, in the first 6 months of 2016, carbon emissions from electricity generation were at their lowest point in 25 years, even as electricity demand continues to rise. due largely to greater use of American clean-burning natural gas, now our nation's largest fuel source for electricity. And thanks to our nation's world-class refiners, which produce cleaner gasoline and diesel fuels, and in combination with more fuel-efficient vehicles, U.S. air pollutants have fallen by 70% since 1970, even as vehicle miles traveled have increased by more than 180%. Further, thanks in part to the increased use of domestic natural gas, ozone concentrations have dropped by 17% since 2000, all of which makes the United States not just an energy superpower, but also a global emissions reduction leader. This was achieved primarily through the private sector, through innovation and investment. The oil and natural gas industry's advancements in the decades-old technique of hydraulic fracturing paired with horizontal drilling is driving America's energy revolution. It was the billions of dollars that refiners invested in clean air technologies for their operations and in developing cleaner burning fuels that have led to lower air emissions from our fuels. But of course, we don't operate in a vacuum, as all of you in this room know so well. The government at the federal, state, and local levels, and let me add, as they should, set the regulatory parameters in which we operate. For all the innovation, investment, and talent within this or any other industry, policy clearly matters. These remarkable achievements that I've just listed, by any measures, are even more remarkable in light of the many constraints imposed on the industry by regulations designed more to stifle domestic fossil fuel development than to benefit American consumers. To continue to lead the world in not just oil and natural gas production and refining, but also emissions reduction, and to maintain the United States' best in the world refineries, we must break from the recent past. We must examine the regulatory onslaught of the last few years that has proposed or imposed some 145 new regulations on the oil and gas industry, and other executive actions on our industry, and instead work to implement smart energy regulations that are focused on the consumer, that help grow our domestic economy, protect our workers, and continue to improve the environment. It is our view that regulations that do not align with those basic and common sense goals should be re-examined, revised, or removed to make way for smarter and forward-looking energy policies. Case in point, today 94% of federal offshore acreage is off limits to energy production. Allowing more offshore oil and natural gas production could create over 800,000 new jobs, grow our economy by up to $70 billion a year, and raise more than $200 billion in cumulative revenue for the government treasury. Restricted offshore areas could hold more than 50 billion barrels or more of oil and more than 195 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Just imagine what industry could do to further benefit consumers, the economy, and the environment if more of that energy were available for responsible and safe domestic production. Just think about how many more people around the world in developing countries could have access to cleaner burning North American natural gas or benefit from the clean burning fuels provided and produced by American refineries, and what this could mean for our global environment. As we look to the new Congress and the incoming Trump administration, we hope that they will take notice of the American energy sector's record of success, commitment to safety, and choose collaboration with industry and a market-based approach that's always focused on what's best for consumers as the guiding policy principles. We know we need more energy, but we haven't seen any meaningful expansion of offshore access in decades. We know we need to expand energy infrastructure to keep pace with our new energy reality and to deliver affordable energy to families and businesses. But government decisions and red tape are obstructing energy infrastructure projects and the good jobs they create, even for projects that have successfully completed exhaustive approval processes. 8 in 10 voters support increased development of our country's energy infrastructure, but a small vocal minority have taken it upon themselves to target these projects to advance their anti-fossil fuel political agenda. What they are doing in reality is putting themselves, workers, and property at risk. Longer term, by attempting to constrain private investment in energy infrastructure, and I want to highlight private investment, not taxpayer-funded investment, they are potentially preventing the creation of millions of well-paying jobs and promoting potentially increased energy costs for millions of their fellow Americans. As an example, despite ample natural gas supplies nearby, the northeastern United States is home to 7 of the top 10 most expensive states for electricity costs. A study by the New England Coalition for Affordable Energy reports that failure to expand natural gas and electricity infrastructure in the region could cost households and businesses an estimated $5.4 billion in higher energy costs and more than 167,000 private sector construction jobs just between 2016 and 2020. Conversely, investments in energy infrastructure lead to short and long-term job creation, economic growth, affordable energy for millions of Americans. A recent study found that updating America's energy infrastructure could generate up to $1.15 trillion, that's a T, $1.15 trillion in new private capital investment, which for context, as I was talking to Peter before lunch today, is almost 3 times the size of the transportation bill that was signed into law at the end of 2015. Think of the opportunities we could have in this country, combining the public infrastructure, as Congressman DeFazio and others have worked so hard on, with private sector investment that's 3 times larger, putting those two together for the benefit of American society. This level of investment is estimated to support 1.1 million new jobs and add $120 billion per year to our nation's economy by 2025. That's the kind of progress the American people made clear they want to see in the months and years ahead from their elected leaders, from municipal governments, all the way to federal agencies. Before I conclude, I'd like to now turn and say a few words about a pressing matter that's been identified as a top priority, I'm sure, for many in this room, and that is tax reform. As the incoming administration and new Congress look to work together to reform the nation's tax code, we hope that any changes will make America more globally competitive, are evenly applied, and mindful of the important role the oil and natural gas industry plays in job creation and economic growth. As an industry that supports 9.8 million American jobs, accounts for close to 8% of our gross domestic product, and contributes on average about $70 million a day to the federal government in revenue from royalties, taxes, and rents, even during a down market, we understand the need for tax reform. Fundamentally, tax policy, just like broader energy policy, should promote the safe and responsible production, refining, and transportation of energy, including imports and exports, as this will help ensure reliable and affordable supplies of energy for consumers. Fortunately, a strong majority of American voters agree with our fundamental views. Based on the results of an election night poll, we found that 80% of American voters support increased domestic energy production and refining. And this strong support crosses party lines, with 71% of Democrats, 94% of Republicans, and 76% of independents. But the poll also found that 81% of voters support increased development of our country's energy infrastructure, which will bring those cleaner burning fuels from our nation's best-in-the-world refineries to even more Americans and energy consumers around the world. The poll also found that American voters reject the false choice offered by some between growing the economy by producing and consuming more energy and a cleaner environment. Specifically, 77% of voters support natural gas's role in reducing U.S. greenhouse gas emissions from electricity production. Few other issues enjoy energy's level of bipartisan support, and energy remains one of the few that can bridge the ideological divide between Democrats and Republicans. Our goal is to broaden that common consensus that will spur lawmakers to harness the American voters' embrace of energy policies that drive economic growth, lower consumer costs, continue our current trajectory of environmental improvement, all while increasing American competitiveness, and provide our allies with a reliable partner that uses its considerable energy resources as a way to truly lift people up, to bring people from poverty all around the world. It is our hope that the incoming administration and incoming Congress will, like many of their pro-energy states, embrace our nation's potential as a global energy leader and work with the industry to ensure that consumer demand is met and help to ensure that America's 21st century renaissance will continue to deliver the economic opportunity and environmental benefits for many years to come. We occupy an important point in our nation's history. For the first time in our lifetime, we can now say that North America has the potential to become a net energy exporter. That's a revolutionary change, a significant shift from where we were just a few short years ago. So the question we face in the future is not whether the United States of America has the natural resources, the talent, and the technology to produce and refine the energy we need to grow and prosper, because, as just demonstrated, we clearly do. In the months and years ahead, it is our hope that energy policy at all levels of government will be guided by a collective, bipartisan vision of an American energy future that generates the kinds of jobs, revenue to the government, and economic activity that have been the hallmark of our industry since its very beginning. Ultimately, the very foundational nature of oil and natural gas as a source of electricity, fuel, and feedstock for everyday products makes the national energy policy discussion more than just an abstract policy position or discussion. It makes it a discussion about what's best for American workers, consumers, families, and the environment. Truly, energy is everything. As we look to the future, the oil and natural gas industry stands ready to offer solutions that help meet the needs of our nation and indeed the world, and to work with elected officials at all levels of government to ensure that the American consumer continues to benefit from affordable, reliable domestic energy. Above all, we will remain responsible stewards of the natural resources we develop and a good neighbor and citizen to the communities in which we operate. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for participating with us.